All right, I think we can start SAPM.
Directly, or we give them 5 minutes?
I think we're good. We have quite a lot of people already.
Okay. So welcome all. Welcome everybody. We are delighted to be here with you today. We understand that we have a growing number of people from all around the globe in this webinar organized by the United Nations Office of the High Representative for LLECs and SIDS, with the support of the SIDS Global Business Network and International Trade Center, which I'm proud to represent here. And we will be talking about implementing the private sector priorities in support of the Antigua Barbuda agenda for development states. So we are delighted to be here with you today. We have a very distinguished group of panelists and discussants, and we will try to break down what we all worked together when we met in Antigua and Barbuda several months ago. Now we're all over the world trying to discuss, and thanks for joining us. We will start with Mrs. Tisha Hope Francis, team leader of the SIDS sub-program at OHRLLS. She will be speaking on behalf of Her Excellency Madame Rabat Fatima, Undersecretary General and head of the OHRLLS. So Tishka, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Especion, and Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is a pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, and I would like to begin by expressing my deep appreciation to the International Trade Center for co-organizing this important event with OHRLLS. I also thank the speakers and the co-chairs of the Steering Committee on Partnerships for SIDS for their invaluable support in holding this event. Public-private partnerships have long been recognized as a crucial element in advancing sustainable development in SIDS. The private sector is indispensable in driving innovation, providing resources, and scaling solutions that cannot be done by governments alone. Recognizing this, OHRLLS launched the Global Business Network in 2014 to strengthen private sector engagement within the SIDS agenda. The recently adopted SIDS Program of Action, the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, or the ABAS, calls for new, innovative, results-driven partnerships grounded in collaboration, transparency, and accountability. ABAS emphasizes a whole of government and whole of society approach, engaging all stakeholders, including private sector, to deliver sustainable solutions. This vision was reinforced at the 2014 SIDS Global Business Network Forum, also held in Antigua and Barbuda, where stakeholders shared commitments and strategies to advance the SIDS agenda. The forum provided a unique opportunity for the private sector to contribute directly to the outcomes of the SIDS-4 conference. It engaged the business and investment communities in generating recommendations that support the implementation of ABAS, capturing the collective vision and strategies needed to advance impactful public-private partnerships, all aligned with ABAS goals. OHRLLS is now actively promoting these priorities and mobilizing international support to ensure tangible actions on the ground. And today's webinar is an important step in moving this process forward. We also look forward to integrating these outcomes into the ongoing work of the SIDS Partnership Framework and presenting them at key international fora, including COP29 and next year's 4th International Conference on Financing for Development and the UN Ocean Conference. Additionally, we look forward to the next SIDS-GBN Forum to be convened in 2026, with the preparatory process beginning next year, also guided by the outcomes of the 2024 Forum. I encourage all of you to engage actively in this process, as your contributions will play a pivotal role in driving our shared agenda forward. In closing, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to our speakers for their invaluable contributions and to all participants for your engagement today. Thank you very much, and back to you, Especial.
Thank you very much, Tishka, for those inspiring words. I think that we have a very interesting debate today, a very interesting exchange that will cover all the 6 regions. But before going into that, on presenting the outcomes, I would like to give the word to Eva Marie Westergaard, Sustainable Development Officer at UN-OHRLLS, and she will be presenting a brief overview of all the outcomes before we go into the specific themes and different regions that we'll be presenting today. Eva Marie, please.
Thank you so much, SID-GBN, for giving me the word. And let me just start by actually adding a link to the outcome document in the chat, because I think that would be very useful for everyone to follow. And also let me say thank you to all the speakers and participants for supporting this event today. The SIDS Global Business Network Forum 2024 took place in Antigua Barbuda from 25 to 26 May, ahead of the 4th International Conference in SIDS. And the forum provided a unique opportunity for the private sector to engage directly with the outcomes of the 4th conference and the ABAS. It focused on key essential areas to the future prosperity of the private sectors in SIDS. Session 1 explored how SIDS can unlock the potential for building strong blue-green economies. Session 2 highlighted the potential for diversifying economies through empowering local entrepreneurship. Session 3 identified ways to strengthen the enabling business environment. And Session 4 looked at how to attract financing and investment into local businesses. And this event culminated in a set of transformative recommendations titled Private Sector Priorities in Support of the ABAS. So that's the document that I just put in the chat. And these priorities really reflect the collective vision and strategies of the private sector to strengthen engagement and facilitate impactful public-private partnerships in line with the ABAS goals. So they provide overarching recommendations which can be considered in the design of policies, programs, and initiatives, as well as concrete action points which can be implemented by stakeholders. And these recommendations and action points are listed under each of the 4 themes of the forum session. So that's also the themes that we will follow in the presentations today. So we'll hear these major recommendations and action points that came from each session. And I encourage you all to look at the document for other details, because there is a lot in the document that we don't have time to cover today. OHRLLS is now actively advocating for these priorities, mobilizing international support to ensure that they move from dialogue to action. And they will guide the work of the SIDS-GBN over the next decade. And we also acknowledge that work is already being done by different organizations in relation to these priorities, and we aim to showcase this within the network for knowledge sharing. So we really look forward to building on this next year when we initiate the preparatory process of the SIDS-GBN Forum 2026. And we are committed to reviewing the progress of these initiatives at the SIDS-GBN Forum 2026 and its preparatory process. We will also be bringing the outcomes forward at relevant events, including at COP29, where we are organizing a side event on public-private partnerships for the renewable energy transition, together with the International Renewable Energy Agency. So in this way, we aim to engage the private sector and advocate for private sector partnerships in UN processes that relate to SIDS. And we invite you all to get engaged, including in the preparatory process that we start next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie, for that comprehensive view of the outcomes. And now we will pass to different private sector actors that will be giving the different sections that were discussed. We will start with the Blue-Green Roadmap recommendations from that working group. And that will be, and I have the honor of presenting Ms. Caroline Trubetskoy, who is Executive Director and Marketing and Operations of 2 beautiful hotels in St. Lucia, Asia Stenet and Jane Mountain Resorts. So please, Caroline, you have the floor.
Thank you, Scipion. Lovely to be here again. It was great meeting quite a few of those listening, I hope, today in Antigua. So I was invited to present in Antigua, as you just said, director of these two resorts, which have a very strong, I would say, connection with regenerative travel and also responsible operation of a hotel operation. But I also have a lot of experience as a volunteer leader with the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, the local St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association, and also as chairperson of the St. Lucia National Conservation Fund and the Caribbean Regional Caribbean Biodiversity Fund. Next slide, please. So I know I only have 5 minutes. Could you go to the next slide, please? I can't change it because, thank you very much, beautiful. So, so we don't have to really go into a lot of detail because I think that we can agree that we know what are our key challenges. And whether we talk from the Caribbean perspective or from the perspective of all SIDS, you know, we have the same challenges that threaten our very existence and way of life, from climate change, which requires robust adaptation, to resilience efforts, to the critical need for sustainable water resources management and also adoption of renewable energy to cut our reliance on fossil fuels. Each of these challenges, including, of course, protecting our rich biodiversity, enhancing our agricultural resilience, or even how we manage waste and water, all of this requires immediate and sustained action. Next slide. Central to, next slide, please. So I hope the slide will change. If somebody can switch it over because I can't control it. So central to our strategy really to move forward is really the issue of governance, stakeholder engagement, and community empowerment. I'm waiting for the slide to change over.
Carolyn, we changed it and we put it on presenter view, but it's just not working. So let us just try to see if we can.
May I share? May I share my own
maybe
presentation?
you can try to share and see if it works on your end. It's very weird.
Yes.
With pleasure.
For those that don't know, Murphy was from a SIDS. So the law of Murphy applies to people from small island developing states. But we will be with you right away. And
could you stop sharing those so I can share? Or can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see it.
Oh, perfect.
So there you go.
Yeah, perfect.
Please, yeah.
So, and you see it in full, yeah? You see the full slide or just half
in
the
full?
slide?
It's perfect, yeah.
It's perfect. Okay, so we already were there, and I said we really all know what are our key challenges. So I will go on to the next slide. And so for us, really, central to our strategy are the pillars of sustainable progress, which has to include governance, stakeholder engagement, and community empowerment. But I chose to highlight here the need for communication, coordination, collaboration, and commitment. And what I'm really trying to say is that we know what are the challenges. We are probably in possession of many, many excellent scientific and academic reports of what we need to do, but we don't seem to communicate with each other. We don't coordinate with each other. We don't collaborate to the extent needed, and we're certainly not committed to see what needs to be done through and show results. So to me, that's really very important that we look at that from this very practical perspective of how can we communicate better, how do we coordinate, collaborate, and commit. Naturally, the key requirement is that all of our actions must be underpinned by science-based evidence. But as we also highlighted in our panel in Antigua, there is sadly still a lot of duplication of effort. And if we were able to streamline the resources by preventing this, it would really also help optimizing progress and actions and also use of funds and expertise. We also spoke at length to what I call a comprehensive information platform, where again, we can share in a much better fashion what's out there, what is the information we have, what organizations are involved, and what initiatives can be joined or are taking place, and what are, of course, the best practices. There's also this idea of a public-private sector, multi-stakeholder entity. What this is supposed to be, I called it the Blue-Green Vision Commission, but it's not about vision, it's actually the implementation. And it needs to be, I think it needs to be private sector led. The private sector has to say to our governments, listen, we don't want to stop every 4 or 5 years when there is an election. And what an interesting day for me to say this. When there is an election, we need to be able to move our initiatives and our actions forward without interruption. There has to be a consistent effort made. And so whatever we come up, it needs to be happening in every small island developing state. What is that body that combines all of our efforts and is held accountable to show results? The access to funding is equally important. It was established clearly, not just in the Global Business Forum, but throughout the SIDS event, that there is endless funding, but to actually get access to it is very complicated and far too complex and time consuming. And then we also had this great idea, I think, for a matchmaking platform, where again, we want to try to bring together projects that need funding with funding sources, and so making finance much more accessible. From the perspective of enhancing governance and coordination, we have already talked about the big ticket items that really require coordinated regional actions: waste, plastic reduction, circular economies, water, renewables. The role of governments needs to be the facilitation of the creation of policy frameworks that support blue-green integration and enable effective PPPs. Again, it was a surprise to some that there are some countries, like even St. Lucia, where our legislation, for example, does not currently permit us to introduce renewable energy, not to a meaningful scale. And then again, tax concession incentives for blue-green initiatives is also important. And interesting enough, here St. Lucia has come up with the Tourism Development Act that actually offers additional concessions for anybody that can prove that they are very sustainable in their operations. The next one is the engaging stakeholders and implementing strategies. Again, here we know that community empowerment is critical, leveraging local knowledge and traditions and sustainability practices. And here we want to talk about capacity building and also involvement of the community, and giving them also market access and networking, especially important for entrepreneurs. The matchmaking platform we have discussed about. And then we need to not just share best practices, but also highlight the success stories and publicly recognize them. We're not doing that to the extent necessary, and I think that's absolutely critical. On the funding and financial support mechanisms, we have already established we need easier access to grant funding capital. We need to protect intellectual property, but we also came up with the idea of a SIDS development fund. We have briefly mentioned also the importance of intellectual property protections to safeguard the rights of SIDS innovators, which also would, of course, help sustainable economic growth. Impact investment fund. Again, here we want to think out of the box and really try to come up with something innovative. And then the matchmaking we have also spoken about. I can't be the chair of two conservation trust funds, the St. Lucia Conservation Trust Fund and the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, without again highlighting how conservation trust funds can play such an important role, not just in the Caribbean, but I would say all across the SIDS, because they are established, they work closely with the communities, and they can be helping with the implementation. And I see it too often that there is this lack of I would say, is it trust, or like with any NGOs, governments need to find a way to trust these conservation trust funds or any trust funds that are there that can help them implement. So that I think is really, really important if we want to, see progress and also drive the whole local and global impact forward, especially with the 30-30 goals ahead. On the commitment and collaboration. Again, we need to break silos across all of the sector. There has to be a cohesive public-private sector approach to blue-green development, and that is absolutely necessary to accelerate the progress, irrespective of any political change. The call to action, encourage stakeholders to engage with the roadmap. And again, sometimes I think we make it too complicated with the private sector. I feel that we need to boil it down of really saying, this is what we would like you to do, to contribute. Like, you literally have to just be more practically minded with what we do with them. And then again, very, very important is to really also spend time to monitor and evaluate, because otherwise we again can't really show the progress and the success if we don't keep track of the monitoring and evaluation. I want to highlight very briefly that there's two very interesting publications. Jeff just came up with this publication, How Conservation Trust Funds Are Driving Progress for Nature. And soon on the Caribbean Biodiversity website, Caribbean Biodiversity Fund is this Path to 2030 Advancing Global Conservation Target. And you know what, this is actually a roadmap. I would really recommend that everyone should read this very interesting document that was the keynote speech for the recent Red Lake Congress delivered by Professor Dale Weber. I hope I didn't overstay my welcome. This was maybe a little bit more than 5 minutes, but hopefully it was interesting and useful. Thank you.
It was very interesting. You did pass up a little bit, but I know that everybody would be happy because you had a wealth of information. So now we were going to cross seas and we are going to go to the Ile de la Unión and welcome Mr. Olivier Naria, Associate Professor of la Université de la Unión, and he will be talking on public-private community trust fund recommendations. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur Naria.
Thank you very much, moderator. Joachim, dear colleague, thank you very much for these great opportunities to continue to contribute to the sustainable development of the SIDS. In the private sector priorities in support of HABAS, I'm speaking today about a public-private community trust fund for the development of sport tourism to engage young people and communities. Next slide, please. To better understand the complex political history, geography, and vulnerability of SIDS, I sought to develop a heuristic model with the 17 SDGs of the United Nations. Case studies in the context of SIDS teach us about the challenges and the opportunities. Sport tourism contributes to the emancipation of local communities, especially young people. Sport tourism fosters inclusive economies to stimulate transformation and resilience, even regenerative tourism. Next slide, please. So I suggest to create the Sport and Community Tourism Agency for youth and community engagement to determine specific standard need in sport tourism to work with the program and the needed agency. The agency will ensure compliance with the standard to align sport tourism with the SDGs that prioritize sustainability principle over immediate economic benefits. Governance guidelines for effective data-driven management of sports and community tourism. This agency will manage the Sport Tourism Development Fund to build national capacity with 6 main missions. First is the creation of a comprehensive training and skill enhancement plan. The objectives are to improve the skill of local stakeholders with the identification of opportunities and challenges specific to each SIDS. It's the creation of governments of schools to involve youth community and the other stakeholders by developing planning and implementation skill participatory models and case studies. It is so a creation of a micro and medium-sized businesses incubator to support the creation of small sports and community tourism businesses. The aim is to set up ground and loan for the initial financing of new businesses. The amount will be determined. It's so to support for community tourism, cluster, and the value chains in line with the SDGs. This aim is to increase the attractiveness of the destination by diversifying activities to develop some combined offers. And the last mission is to involving young people and local population in monitoring and assessment. The aim is to develop skill in project evaluation, improving the transparency and quality of the project through the regular feedbacks. Next slide, please. So I propose this timetable for implementation. Today is opening the discussion for structuring the public-private fund with an initial financing from contribution from member states and private funds. Next March, it could be a pilot program in a seed region. Launch training and capacity building with pilot programs area, monitor the socio-economic and environmental impact of these pilot projects. Next September, this could be the rollout, the oversight, and ongoing program adjustments, adaptability and continuous improvement with regular evaluation to measure the effectiveness of the strategy implemented. This is a roadmap I propose to contribute to build the HRLLS. Next slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olivier. It was very interesting to see how we are promoting really our youth in healthy practices. Now we cross again the ocean across Africa and we go to Cabo Verde. And we welcome Ms. Dilma Vieira, who is a CEO of the Center de Incubación de Negocios de Cabo Verde. Bienvenida, Dilma. Vos tem la palabra.
Hello, thank you. First, I would like to thank the organizers for this for the invitation and greet all my fellow panelists and participants at this event. The two panelists present before me. The information is very interesting. I hope to not exceed 5 minutes. I will try. I don't see my presentation.
Yeah, it was there. And I'm sorry, I forgot that you were going to be presenting on setting up a private sector umbrella association for the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and South China Seas of SIDS. While we wait for the presentation, we saw it briefly, and there it is. Do you see it, Dilma?
Yeah.
Okay. If we can put it on full screen.
Okay. Thank you. The next slide, please. Okay, I make some recommendation of the first one in economic diversification to promotion of emerging sectors, encourage the exploration of the new industries such as sustainable tourism, renewable energy, and information technology. In Cape Verde, we already introducing some of these patches, but much more needs to be done. Only when we become self-sufficient in basic needs like access to food, water, and energy can we provide the living condition. So I don't know. It's not. The second one is the development of the agriculture and fisheries. Integrate sustainable practices in agriculture and fishing to strengthen food security and promote export. Next slide, please. Training education, develop the training education that prepares citizens, especially youths and women, for the modern job market and entrepreneurship. For me, it's essential to focus on emerging areas or so-called profession of future to currently reduce the employment and promote the dignified lives. Support entrepreneurship. Investing in incubators is not just the creating, but investing in the annual budget for the government to invest in incubators and accelerators is crucial to approach to sustainable supports startups and reduce their premature mortality. Next one, please. Utilize the AI solution, process automation, and big data analysis to improve operational efficiently. Access to internet and technology. It's not just access, however, this access must be coupled with education. It is necessary to work on the mindset to use the internet for productivity and not just for fun. Next. I think okay. I think I have two slides. The one before. Okay, this one. Implement as no. I'll talk about that. The next, please. Sorry. Creation of specific development funds, create a specific funds for sustainable development and innovation projects, strengthen microfinance institutions that offer accessible credits to small entrepreneurs, offer incentives and attractive private investors in strategic and high impact sectors. Next one, please. Implementing these points will allow for the construction of healthy and sustainable environments in SIDS, promoting economic resilience and quality of life. We must ensure the opportunities focus on the gender to promote economic and social development. When women have equal access to financial resource, they not only drive their own business, but also strengthen local economies, fostering more sustainable and inclusive practice. But this cooperation among parties is essential for the useful implementation of private sector's priorities. When different stakeholders, including government, business, NGOs, and civil society, work together, they can pool research, knowledge, and experience, creating a more conducive environment for innovation and the resolution of complex problems. This collaborative dialogue not only allowed for the identification of shared priorities, but also helps building solution that consider the diverse perspective and needs of each party involved. So next slide. Let's work together to turn this recommendation in concrete practice, promoting a more sustainable future for our community. Thank you so much for your attention.
Muito obrigado, Dilma. So now we will go to the beautiful land of Seychelles, and we invite Ms. Malika Jivan, Director of Abacus Limited, who will be speaking on financing and investment roadmap. the session I had the privilege of working with while in Antigua and Barbuda. So I'm very happy to see you, Malika. I'm also happy to see all the others, of course. You're on mute, Malika. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It was wonderful to be part of ABAS. I think you can move to the next page. I have 2 slides, so it's easier. Thank you. Will you be presenting, Eva?
No, I think there was a little issue that it left the presentation. If we can have the presentation again, it was perfect. We just
think they're
wanted to change the
working on it.
slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Or I can
There it
project.
goes.
You can move to page 2. There's 1 slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, great. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be part of ABAS. I mean, we're in different oceans, different seas, but we have similar problems, and there lies the solutions. My fellow panelists have presented wonderful ideas and wonderful roadmaps. Can you hear me? Yeah. And the most important part now is, how do we finance these? How do we generate businesses to take these ideas and convert them, monetize them, and make them successful for the SIDS? When we discussed at ABAS the problems, it appears that all SIDS have similar problems. The first one is the lack of banking facilities. I think there were lots of examples given where even within the Caribbean, if they had fairs, they couldn't transfer money from Antigua to Barbados, with correspondent banking relationships becoming very, very difficult for banks in the SIDS. It has really, really impacted business and made it difficult. There are new solutions. Samoa had a great example where they've created their own wallet, and anyone visiting the island would download the wallet, transfer their funds, and could purchase everything on the island with this wallet. So, but it requires collective effort, sharing of knowledge and skill to take it to all SIDS. One of the other major points that we discussed was regional integration blocks. I think one of the ministers of Barbados said, "We are small, but we are Tala." And that is so true, especially if you look at the Caribbean cricket team. It's an amazing team, and it takes on large nations of 1.5 billion people and beats them. And I think if we work together, if we have greater unity in terms of trade blocks, transfer of funds, it would greatly help the SIDS. One of the third major problems was for entrepreneurs, the lack of funding, the lack of startups, angel funds, venture capital, ABC. And for venture capitalists, these economies are too small. Plus, there's a lack of exit because there is no listing. So we need to think of innovative financing schemes which involve crowdfunding, which involve larger corporates within these islands, investing in new startups, encouraging, mentoring new startups. And we need tax incentives to do this and encourage and build this whole ecosystem. A fourth major challenge that most SIDS experience is attracting sustainable and responsible investment. And one of the challenges here is the lack of clear, transparent investment policies and rule of law. One of the most successful SIDS is Singapore. I'm surprised that it's still classified as SIDS, but it's gone from a sleepy little fishing village to a bustling metropolitan now, and transparent rules, certainty of law, education, innovation, and innovation were some of its key principles. So how can other SIDS replicate this success? With the space of innovation, and I think all our colleagues, especially Olivier, have presented new ideas. From tourism, we're now going to sports tourism. The concepts are changing, and so do we. We need to keep up with the times. So these were the key outcomes and the key challenges faced by SIDS in the financing arena. On the next page, I presented a possible solution. I think if you could change the slide, Eva, is where we have a central agency.
These are all great ideas, but on their own, it's very difficult to develop. I like what Carolyn said, that investors stay longer than governments. That's an argument I've had with my government for many years. I've been here before you, and I'll be here after you've left the job. So I do believe we need good public-private partnerships, but we need a central agency to coordinate this effort across all SIDS. So what is done in the Caribbean, or what is successful in the South Pacific, can be replicated in the Indian Ocean. And it would be my proposal that we set up the central agency to coordinate and manage the resources, ask governments to sign up, commit, partner with private enterprises, and adopt this roadmap to success. Thank you so much. I hope I've stayed within my time, and thank you so much. That's all from me.
Thanks, Malika. No, all of you stayed within reasonable timing, and it's very good. We will now pass to an open discussion with the distinguished panelists. And I would like to invite first Dr. Cosmas Lukison Sava, who is the Director of the Telecommunication Development Bureau at the International Telecommunications Union. Dr. Cosmas?
Yeah, thank you very much, and greetings to all of you. I'm going to try to be brief. As you all know very well, for small and developing states, digital transformation isn't just a development tool. It's a lifeline that enables more resilient responses to the unique vulnerabilities that SIDS face. By adopting emerging technologies, SIDS can transition from reliance on traditional sectors to blue, green, and innovation-driven economies. And yet, according to our statistics, 33% of people in SIDS remain offline. And we are concerned they are part of the 2.6 billion people who remain offline. ITU is committed to ensuring digital inclusion for all, including the peoples from the SIDS. To overcome the unique barriers faced by SIDS, we need to be deliberate, strategic, and also innovative. So we have developed a plan for us to be able, within our mandate, to advance digital transformation for small and developing states and to accelerate the implementation of the Antigua and Barbuda agenda and the private sector priorities in support of that agenda. Let me highlight just a few points in this regard. Scaling up digital investment by creating a level playing field in the digital markets is of high importance and priority for us. So creating an enabling environment that includes innovative financing mechanisms is critical. And our global symposium for regulators, where all the world regulators assemble to discuss burning issues, would be a nice vehicle to this end. We also want to promote policies and good governance that ensure enabling business environment for digital entrepreneurs. And finally, we think that innovation ideas and innovation ecosystems are an engine of innovation, economic prosperity, and job creation. And we launched an Innovation and Entrepreneurship Alliance for Digital Development, which had its meetings about a week ago in Malta, which was a great success. And we think this could be a very effective vehicle. We established over 17 acceleration centers from across the globe, including small and developing states. And we think we can drive prosperity through this vehicle. Achieving all this, of course, as other speakers have said, require collaboration between governments, the private sector, civil society, and international organizations like ourselves. And I think it is important for us to build synergies to that end. In addition to technical assistance tailored to the needs of small and developing states, I believe ITU global initiatives can also aid these efforts. We are looking also at creating even more acceleration centers across the globe so that they can focus on the burning issues that we have in small and developing states. And you would be happy to know that we are operationalizing the 48 billion that have been pledged by many of our partners, including other UN agencies, for digital development and digital transformation. And next year, we are going to have a series in each of the regions of what we call regional development forums, which is a multi-stakeholder platform where we are going to do matchmaking, looking at those partners that have made pledges and inviting member states, including small and developing states, to pitch their priorities. And then we can have a success in matchmaking and attractive financing into impactful projects. So that I think our effort should not be a unilateral effort, because all of us have got a role to play. We need multi-sectoral approach, and we also need multidisciplinary approach. I look forward to working together with small and developing states and other UN agencies and partners across the board towards our common goals. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cosmas. I would like now to invite Mr. Jost Newman, Director of Programs at the TUI Foundation. Mr. Jost Newman, please.
Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And for those who want to look up the organization, you will not find it under TUI Foundation. It's called TUI Care Foundation. There's a slight difference there. So just make sure that you also add care to TUI Care Foundation, so that you will find our organization if you look for grants. As a donor, I'll give you a brief update of what we have been up to ever since SIDS-4, which was really a wonderful experience from the perspective of building capacity, even of our own organization, to understand the unique challenges of small island developing states, or, as I have learned, big ocean sovereign states, in brackets BOSS, or large ocean states, which, because it really influences also our donor strategy, and it has helped us shape the right programs and designs that really create additionality in small island developing states. So first and foremost, looking at Cabo Verde, for example, we have been continuing with working with the co-creation space that we call the Future Shaper House, to provide technical assistance to entrepreneurs, also facilitate access to finance, and facilitate access to markets and mentoring, which is really important to us. And we are still looking for partners, international and local partners, to collaborate with us in this co-creation space. For example, a UNDP Accelerator Lab took place in this Future Shaper House, and we're inviting more partners to join us. So whenever you come to Cabo Verde, please pay it a visit. We also just yesterday received a proposal created by youth delegates from Cabo Verde that have submitted a proposal to TUI Care Foundation. So thank you so much, Dilma, for introducing me to the delegates. I think I am super excited about this coming together. So we'll carefully review that proposal, but we will continue to support, hopefully, specifically with the delegates from SIDS-4, to conduct boot camps in the Future Shaper House and empower young Cabo Verdeans to become strong voices for sustainability and regeneration, specifically in tourism. Looking at Mauritius, for example, we are launching this month with the Tourism Authority a Destination Zero Waste program that looks at cleanup events around the island with civil society and the private sector, dedicated sustainable experience development involving artisans and upcycling tours, improving the waste infrastructure in Mauritius and building capacity of the private sector to protect nature and reduce single-use plastics, and collaborating with UNEP's Global Plastic Initiative to reduce single-use plastics in tourism specifically. Overall, I can say we grew our grant portfolio to over 2.5 million euro in SIDS at the moment, being basically live in Dominican Republic, Cabo Verde, Jamaica, Mauritius, and Curaçao and Aruba as well. Under the TUI Academy program, which is our educational program facilitating access to vocational training, we supported 950 people in accessing vocational training in tourism and hospitality, focusing specifically on marginalized groups. We have been planting together with the Global Nature Fund, supported by the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, 400,000 mangrove trees in the Dominican Republic. We have supported more than 2,500 women across our project portfolio and contributed to the protection of 350,000 loggerhead turtle hatchlings while advocating for strengthening turtle protection with the private sector. We have also connected our grantees to the TUI ecosystem, hence facilitating access to market. And right now, our grantees, for example, a hydroponic family-owned farm in SAR Cabo Verde is receiving a regular TUI guests for them to learn about the unique challenges of SAR Cabo Verde as an arid island when producing food. So we are trying to really bring the projects closer to the tourists and visitors, for them to have an exchange, for the tourists to be sensitized, and for the partners of TUI Care Foundation, the grantees and investees, to get that access to market. Finally, I have to say, SIDS-4 has really helped shape our understanding of the unique challenges and boosted our ambition to take more action in the future in support of ABAS, to boost the blue and green economy, community empowerment, enabling further business environments, and facilitating finance and investment. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited, and please reach out if you want to strike partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Jos. I think that you will receive many calls after this webinar. I would like now to give the word to Mr. Casper Sonnenson, Head of Policy at the UN Capital Development Fund, the UNCDF, our sister agency of the United Nations. Casper, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, moderator, and thank you also all co-panelists for very interesting interventions. And thank you for inviting UN Capital Development Fund to participate in this webinar. It's a great pleasure. For those of you who don't know, UNCDF's overall mandate is really to support developing countries to develop their economies by supplementing the existing sources of capital assistance they have with grants and highly concessional loans and guarantees. So we're really kind of a financing entity. And based on this mandate, we really aim to use our resources strategically in such a way that we can help mobilize and catalyze additional capital flows for SDG investments. We have special mandate to focus on LDCs, but also on SIDS and other vulnerable countries. So we work very closely with the private sector in many ways. So let me just give a few short practical examples of how we contribute to several of the private sector priority areas here in support of ABAS. So first, to help unlock private investments for blue economies, we manage something called the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, together with UNDP and UNEP. This is a blended finance fund that has mobilized some $200 million to date, and its aim is really to support market-based solutions to coral reef positive businesses, to coral reef protection. One example here is in Micronesia, where this fund is supporting coral reef positive businesses across industries such as ecotourism, sustainable fisheries, aquaculture, waste management. For example, we work with a company called the Pacific Island Tuna to limit the impact of tuna fishing on coral reefs. And the fund supports many similar businesses like that. The second area we're focusing increasingly on is to use credit guarantees for local financial service providers and banks to help them to increase their lending to SMEs. That can then help kind of accelerate blue, green, and inclusive economies. So in Papua New Guinea, for example, we're currently exploring a portfolio guarantee to support SMEs in the blue economy, combined with the technical assistance facility. And this is building on previous experiences we've had in that country that shows very low default rates among SMEs if they're being provided access to credit. A third area I'd like to emphasize, we have a long history of supporting financial inclusion and digital economies in SIDS. So between 2014 and 2021, we implemented an initiative called the Pacific Financial Inclusion Program, which worked with financial institutions in many of the Pacific countries to enroll more than 1 million Pacific Islanders into formal financial services. So building on that effort, we now implement several kind of relevant follow-up initiatives. One of them is called the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program, where we're supporting innovative microinsurance schemes for MSMEs and vulnerable populations. Basically, through this effort, we work with insurers and financial institutions to pioneer something called parametric microinsurance. And this is currently being done in seven Pacific countries, and it helps to get kind of fast digital payouts in cases of natural disasters to help rebuilding faster. Another relevant effort we have is something called the Pacific Digital Economy Program, where we provide financing combined with technical assistance to private sector partners to develop new business models to deliver digital financial services, especially in rural communities, and also to help small businesses participate in online markets. And we also support digital financial inclusion and e-commerce in the Caribbean. In the last 2 years or so, we provided financing to several private sector firms to expand mobile money and e-commerce solutions to underserved groups in the Caribbean countries. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, we are currently helping to introduce the first ever mobile money solution for underserved members of credit unions in that country. So looking forward, we are really actively preparing now also for the Oceans Conference and the Financing for Development Conference next year that was mentioned here earlier. And we hope to be able to announce further commitments then of new financing focused initiatives that will help advance ABAS and also benefit the private sector and SIDS. So look forward to engaging with this group going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very nice presentation, Casper. I think all speakers have really been very interesting and have tried to be short. So maybe we have a time to 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if you wish, because we have a benefit, and I think we are a little bit before schedule, so we could have the possibility, before trying to wrap up, to listen from you from the field, but mainly questions that you might have to our distinguished colleagues on how we work together.
If anyone, I posted in the group, if anyone wants to take the floor, they can raise their hand so I can give them speaking rights.
Well, while we wait for maybe some questions, I wanted to stress that every person speaking here had talked about collaborating with each other, understanding each other. So now I see that Rick has raised his hand. And when you present yourself, please, when you speak, please tell who you are and where you're from.
Rick, you should be able to speak, to unmute yourself.
Well, if you're unable to speak, if you write the question, Rick, I can read it out loud. Well, I believe that then we will have to pass on that. And Caroline, you had a question, Caroline? You were
actually, this is Rick. I made it. I got
you're talking through Caroline.
I was talking to myself too long. Murphy was in control.
Super. So please go ahead. And if you can put the camera and tell us who you are.
Yeah, no problem. Yep, I'm Rick Warner. I was at the SIDS conference. My organization is called Coastal 8. You can take a look at it. We've been collaborating with 5 island nations for about 5 years to bring forward a software as a service that can actually help enable the collaboration and integration with the private sector, Northern Hemisphere, and with the SIDS globally. So that's what we're about. I live part-time in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Bequia, Charleston, the other part. I just wanted to actually compliment all of you after being at the SIDS meeting for bringing forward these initiatives and perspectives. My message when I spoke quickly at the UN was, we need to look at capital as a river, and it has a language of its own. And we need to come together with the UN, NGOs, and some private sector players to, as Caroline put forward, to actually properly measure and track and unify our, as SIDS, one community, and bring that forward as what we see as a huge financial opportunity for good returns and gains to the SDGs. So I'm really putting forward so you can understand Coastal 8 a little bit, but as a private sector individual, we've been spending a lot of time in my organization to move this forward and want to, engage at another level. So I think all of your initiatives are fantastic. In fact, we were over at Cabo Verde at the Ocean Race gathering there for climate, and we're duly impressed with the initiatives with microloans that were going on there and the return rates. So I'll put it this way. I do, and I'll say this, and it's not a question, but almost a statement. When I've been to the COP meetings, the General Assembly meetings in New York, et cetera, it is interesting that the UN cannot have a private sector logo. It's an NGO logo. There is no category for the private sector in all the badges I've received. So if we want to be inclusive, and this is a message to the UN in general, we gotta change that. And there are good players in the private community that believe in constructive returns. So great opportunity for me to just tell you personally what I said in my Discord there at the UN. But again, compliments, because I think it's right on track. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rick, for those words. But maybe to let you know that both of them, institutions from the United Nations here, UNCDF, ITU, UN-OHRLLS, the International Trade Center, which I have the privilege to represent, we work very closely with the private sector, and we do acknowledge it. And I think, like you specifically said, the work that the UN-OHRLLS effort in Antigua, creating this SIDS Global Business Network, thought that exactly to give the voice. And we have a very strong voice, and some of the presenters today are from the private sector. So Caroline, you have your hand up, but briefly.
Certainly, very briefly. Again, it was really, really fascinating to hear everyone speak, and I recognize, of course, some of you that I also saw at SIDS, but I wanted to highlight that, interesting enough, as the chair of the St. Lucia National Conservation Trust Fund, I just launched an initiative called St. Lucia Marine Health Alliance. And it is not novel that you're trying to collect donations from visitors for marine health. But what was the biggest challenge? To get an online payment mechanism. And this is the sort of practical problems that are often not understood. It took me 1 year to work with a bank for the bank to understand what we were trying to do. And I'm very pleased that we actually managed to get a regional bank, Republic Bank, to allow us like a credit card mechanism on this website. And I'm hoping that it will help us to connect with visitors and collect funding. And of course, the Conservation Trust Fund is a charity. So any community group, anybody who is looking for funding for initiatives on the island of St. Lucia could draw from that. We are trying, but then when I hear the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, I would like to see Casper all spreading out in the Caribbean. I would love to work with you because, as a resort owner, and we have a very large diving operation, these reefs die in front of our very eyes. This year was particularly hard with the ocean temperatures, and it is really so sad. I just hope we will act fast enough to bring about, some rescue. So I'm a bit sad because when I look down what we have left, it's not that nice anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Those are very interesting exchanges. If you could please, but very quickly, please.
Yeah, just very quickly. It's basically a question to Caroline because I remember the matchmaking platform being mentioned several times already at SIDS, but also here again. And I think it's a great one that has already a few sisters and brothers out there in the world in different regions. So is there really concrete plans with moving this forward? Because if so, I would be also very curious to collaborate on that.
But I believe maybe that's a question also maybe for our colleagues at UN-OHRLLS.
Yeah, I think that Eva Maria also expressed interest in it. It is really at this point, I would say, an idea that needs to be seen through. But I think it would be a good idea. And what in a way, the reason that came up is that the Clinton Foundation, after the 2017 hurricanes in the Caribbean, they had 2 events in the Caribbean where they brought together possible investors of donor agencies with organizations and projects in the Caribbean. And the process was very effective when that happened after the 2017 hurricanes. So from that moment on, I felt that there was something there to keep coming up with a matchmaking platform, whether it is in person or it is in fact digital, virtual. I think there's something there that should be pursued. Thank you.
Yes, if we proceed that in that way, the International Trade Center would also, because we are specialized in that. Maybe Eva Maria, I don't know if you want to say a word on that specific plan, or maybe Tishka, or we can also follow it up as other recommendations. Cosmas, you wanted to add a word?
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to add my voice to the issue of matchmaking. I think it has got a different complexion. Ours is, of course, there was an issue raised by the private sector. We have over 1,000 private sector who are our sector members. And you are more than welcome to participate in our work in the area of ICTs. But I wanted to say that, of course, we are very serious about matchmaking, making sure that we address the priorities of regions. Like the Caribbean, we know the vulnerabilities associated with natural disasters and hazards. And we are rolling out an early warning system framework throughout the world, particularly focusing on small and developing states, with the target, of course, that were mentioned by the UN Secretary General, that by 2027, every living human being must be within reach of an alert to save lives. So that is a project which is well funded, and we are currently rolling it out and also establishing national emergency telecommunication plans for those countries that are vulnerable to that. So I just thought I should add my voice to it.
Thank you, Dr. Cosmas, for that. I think that, yes, I think that the collaboration and the need, but I'll wait that for the wrap-up. Having said that, I have the privilege now to welcome Mr. Donald Cronin, Deputy Permanent Representative of Ireland to the United Nations in New York. And of course, it's a privilege to have one of our partners being also from an island. And I think we identify all ourselves, me also being from an island with Ireland. So, Mr. Cronin, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you to everyone. I want to pay special thanks to ITC, OHRLLS, to the SIDS Global Business Network, now into your 10th, 11th year of existence, and the great work that's going on. And all of the speakers and participants today, really, because in the short time we have heard a very rich tapestry of the work that's going on, the follow-on to Abbas, and where we need to get to collectively. So this is very timely and useful discussion. I'm down in the program as giving reflections on the way forward. I think that's a very large task. I think the way forward has been sketched out by the participants. What I do want to do, though, is to just have a few short reflections. Ireland, as you say, is a small island on the edge of Europe. So we have a great affinity with SIDS. We engage with them a lot here in New York, where I'm based. We are co-chairing the partnership committee with Palau. So Fergal, my PR, who'd wished to be here, but he was called away, and Ilana, the PR from Palau, are very much concentrating on how we make the Abbas document into reality. It was a theme that was picked up by many of the participants today, by Tishka, Eva Maria, and others in terms of how do we now move to tangible action? What are we going to deliver before SIDS-5 in Cabo Verde? And how do we build on the momentum that was gained in Antigua and Barbuda? I was there myself. It was a fantastic few days. We, of course, took part in the Global Business Network event there. The Secretary General of the UN participated in that. Very useful to have strong leadership from the UN system and to see the great participation by all. So taking that next step of what is the tangible action on the ground and how SIDS are organized, how businesses are networked and organized, how governments can work together came out very strongly in the discussion just now. There were quite a number of either existing institutions or proposed institutional frameworks that came out, be it, we know there's the SIDS Center of Excellence, the Blue-Green Vision Commission, the Sport and Community Tourism Platform, there's a Global Island Partnership, of course. I will mention the local 2030 Islands Network, which Ireland is part of the steering committee of. Discussion around private sector umbrella associations, or central agencies to coordinate across all of SIDS. And I think what is really important is going back to what I call the 4 C's that Caroline mentioned: communication, coordination, collaboration, and commitment. Those 4, I think, really strike at the heart, because what we do need to have is good cooperation, good collaboration. You need to have networks in place and the platforms to do that, and also to guard against proliferation of platforms, networks, and bodies which people may find hard to navigate around. So it's having that clarity and that access for people to know what they're trying to achieve, how they're achieving it, how they can reach across. And I think throughout the seminar this morning, those great ideas on matchmaking, on linking up with others. What also came out very strongly to me is the discussion around innovation, the discussion around we need financing. Financing now needs to be the engine that drives this. As the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, said in his opening remarks, if you remember, for SIDS-4, the engine is very much running on empty in many of the SIDS countries, with heavy debt burdens, going around these cycles of responding to natural disasters and weather events, climatic events. It's very difficult for governments to find enough engine room and space and drive to be able to drive their own developments, and that needs urgent attention. That's what we're focusing on as well at the multilateral level, to give the wherewithal for the private sector to do its job. And what we've heard this morning again is the great ideas of how the private sector and those agencies who are supporting them, ITU, UNCDF, the private investors that spoke this morning, those who are setting up initiatives to support. So let that be private sector driven. Let that be networked, and let governments create the space for that, and let us as an international community both recognize it, lean into it, and do what we can to enable it. That's certainly a message that came out very strong to me as well. And I think also just to mention the gender barriers that were brought out as well by one of the panelists, very important as well, because we do know, be it on the digital divide or access to finance and so on, that there are gender barriers which need to be addressed, and some very useful ideas on how we do that. The last thing I would say is that Ireland is very happy to stand with you as the SIDS Global Business Network and to work with our partners in OHRLLS and elsewhere to be able to assist where we can, to share our own experience as well. Ireland doesn't come in to this forum or these discussions with ready-made answers. We're not standing up and saying, oh, look how great we are. we happen to benefit from by accident of geography from where we are. But we have had difficult times. We've had famine, we've had immigration. You only go back 15 years when we were bankrupt, effectively, and the IMF came to bail us out after our economic collapse. And to now see how our economy is driven by the private sector, by multinational investment, by IT, pharmaceutical, investing in the blue economy, investing in solar and so on. There's some examples and lessons that we're always very happy to share, and that's why it's great for us to take part. Also to learn from you, from what's happening in the SIDS, and to reflect back on our experience as well. So thank you very much again, and we look forward to our onward collaboration, and we look forward to, in the SIDS Partnership Committee, in looking here in New York as to how we can make sure that ABAS is not only followed up on, but is tracked, is monitored, where we're accountable to it, and that's a job that all of us need to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cronin. I would like to give testimony that when I was working in the Caribbean island, opened its doors and trained investment promotion agencies from all around the Caribbean in a tour that we did, learning from you how we could learn the experience, especially like you explained, Ireland is at the forefront in investment promotion for smaller states. So we benefit from that under the European Union program before. So we thank you for the continued support to SIDS, in my case, for the Caribbean. I think that there were many things that were shared today. I think several people said, Caroline, Dr. Cronin said it, the 4 C's: communicate, coordinate, collaborate, and commit. Continue to talk to each other, get tangible actions. The SIDS Center of Excellence in Antigua Barbuda is one that the International Trade Center would like really to support and continue supporting, especially from our side with specialized data. In that occasion, we did launch a SIDS trade tracker to help policy makers. The community engagement was saved by everybody. Engage with the community, take into account our women, our youth, the environment, and digital technologies. How can we transform digital? How can we achieve digital transformation in our countries to achieve development? We talked a lot about capacity building and education. The need for finance. How can we find innovative ways to fund maybe some funds that are not looking always at immediate returns, but long-term returns, in which we could also take into consideration the environment. A lot about sports. How can we guarantee a better future for our youth through sports? Also, how can we link the local industry to the tourism that we have? Sell through experiences, and that also the type of tourism that we're trying to sell, a better tourism, a tourism that is based in the people from the SIDS, in the cultures. How can we protect intellectual property is something that I notice and I am also very fond of. So I think that the discussion today was very good. We have not exceeded ourselves very much. Only I see 3 minutes. I would like to say that for those that do not know the International Trade Center, we are the joint agency of the WTO and the United Nations promoting SMEs. We are very ably led by a SIDS national, Pamela Cooper-Hamilton from Jamaica, which is our executive director, which is very much attached to, I would say, transforming trade and changing lives in SIDS, which is what we're trying to achieve. I am Escipión Oliveira. I am the director of the Division of Enterprise Competitive Institutions, and I would really like to express my sincere thanks to all our colleagues at UN-OHRLLS, led by Madame Rabat Fatima, that have made all this possible, that has united us, and in particular, of course, Ms. Tisha Hope Francis and Eva Marie Vos-Vestergaard. Having said that, I would like to tell you gracias, thank you, merci, obrigado, go rabet mait agat. I hope I said it well in Irish. Tak, and at your disposal all around the world. And thank all of the persons that are at difficult hours. I myself am in Ethiopia now, not a SIDS, but a very beautiful country as well. So thank you very much for participating. Eva Marie, maybe you want to say a few words at the end to thank?
You said it very well, but we will be sending out more information on all the follow-up work. Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Only 5 minutes late. It's a record for the UN.
Let's keep it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Especion, especially. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Merci, Marie. Thanks a lot. Cheers.